Welcome students to another lecture in the series. Greetings of the day. Let us continue with the concept of marginal costing and profit planning. We were studying break-even analysis in the previous video. Let us see and continue that. Let us see what is margin of safety. It is defined as the difference between actual sales and sales at break-even point. In other words, you can say that it is the amount by which the actual volume of sales exceeds the break-even point. So margin of safety can be expressed in absolute money terms or even as a percentage. For that we do have the formula actual sales minus the break-even point. Let us see this example and understand it better. Here the actual sales, you can say, for company X and Y, we can subtract the break-even point and obtain the margin of safety. As a percentage, you can simply express this at your margin of safety upon the actual sales into 100. So we are able to obtain margin of safety as a percentage of sales even. The size of margin of safety actually indicates the soundness of your business. When margin of safety is large, this means that your business is in a situation to make profits after even there is any fall in sales. So in such a situation, the business stands in a better situation of survival in the times of depression, like we have the current pandemic situation. Okay, a large margin of safety usually indicates low fixed costs. When the margin of safety is low, any loss of sales may be a matter of a serious concern in the part. Now, margin of safety is directly related to profit. We know this, we can use this formula. Profit is equals to margin of safety into profit volume ratio. Let us try and understand the concept further using certain examples. Or you can use this formula, margin of safety is equals to profit upon the PV ratio simply. If profit is 10%, then PV ratio is 40%. If it is like that, then we can calculate margin of safety as 25%. When actual sales are given, then in that case you can use this formula, margin of safety ratio into PV ratio into the actual sales. When profit is not known but margin of safety is known, then we can use this formula simply, margin of profit is equals to margin of safety into PV ratio. And in units, you can simply use this formula, profit upon contribution per unit. When margin of safety is not satisfactory, we need to take certain steps to improve it, and the steps that we need to take can be increase in the sales of volume, increase in the selling price, reduce the fixed costs, reduce the variable costs, or improve sales mix by increasing the sales of products with larger PV ratio. The effect of price reduction is always to reduce PV ratio, raise the break-even point, and shorten the margin of safety. Let us understand the concept through an example. Suppose the price is reduced from 75 to 60. Variable cost is given as rupees 50 per unit. Fixed cost is rupees 10,000. Actual sales is rupees 75,000. These are the prices before reduction and prices after reduction. Let us compare and see. Selling price per unit reduced. Variable cost per unit remains same. Total fixed cost remains same. Contribution will get changed. That is your selling price minus the variable cost. So PV ratio will also change. Break even point, simply your fixed cost upon the PV ratio. We can calculate it is coming out to be different than actual sales, that is 75,000. So we can calculate the margin of safety in both the cases. Before reduction it was 45,000, but after reduction it has got reduced to 15,000. Then further, let us calculate this question. We need to calculate margin of safety in these individual situations. In the first case, we are given break-even point as 40% and actual sales as 40,000. Let us see the question. In that case, we can calculate margin of safety by subtracting both of these. So we have subtracted 40% of this amount from this only. So we are able to obtain 24,000. Margin of safety. In next question, we are given the actual sales and BE point in units. So we are able to find it out in units. Then in this case, only BE point is given to us. Break-even point is given to you. See, third question, only break-even point is given in 75%. So in this case, we are having 100 minus the BE point, that is 25%. Then margin of safety, that is profit upon the PV ratio, that is 87,500. Then in the last case, we are given the profit and contribution. Simply we can divide these two and find out the margin of safety. Let us see one more question. We need to calculate break-even point in each of these independent situations. Fixed cost is given as 10,000 and PV ratio is 50%. Let us see the solution. We are able to find it out using the formula fixed cost upon the PV ratio, and that is coming out as 20,000. In next case, we are given with fixed cost as 15,000, contribution per unit as rupees 3, so it is coming out as 5,000. In the next case, we are given margin of safety in percentage, that is 20%, so your BE point can be obtained by subtracting it from 100, and that is coming out as 80% of sales. In the next part, we are given with the other informations using which we can find out our PV ratio. Fixed cost is also given and PV ratio we have calculated, so the break-even point is this. In the next part, we are given with actual sales and margin of safety. We can simply subtract both of these. How we have calculated this one? We have subtracted 30% of this 50,000 from this only, so 35,000. In the next part, also somewhat same approach is also given, so we have used that. From here we can find out the actual sales, that is your margin safety upon margin of safety in percentage, and we are able to obtain that the sales is 5 lakh rupees. And from here we can calculate the break-even point by subtracting margin of safety and actual sales from each other, and then we are able to find out that break-even point is 4 lakh. We can even verify this. Profit is 30,000, actual sales is 5 lakh. Your MS ratio, margin of safety ratio, is 20%, PV ratio is 30%. So you can calculate that and you'll be able to find it out. It is coming out as 30,000 only. In the next part, actual sales is given as 4 lakh and margin of safety as 70,000. We can subtract these two to obtain the break-even point. In the next case, actual sales minus the margin of safety. So we are able to find out 7,500 in units as break-even point. Let us see one more question. Here, first case is that fixed cost is 37,000 and contribution is 84,000. So we know that very well that contribution is equals to fixed cost plus profit. So we can calculate the amount of profit from here. Then in the next case, variable cost of 80% of sales is given. Margin of safety ratio is given as 30% and sales is 1 lakh. So we can calculate PV ratio first of all, that is coming out as 20%. And we can simply use this formula, profit is equals to sales into your margin of safety ratio into your PV ratio, and that amount is coming out as 6,000. Then in the third case, they have given you the fixed cost of rupees 2 lakh and margin of safety as 50% and PV ratio is 40%. So we need to find out the profit. So first of all, let us calculate the break-even point by dividing fixed cost with PV ratio. That is coming out as 5 lakh. Then margin of safety ratio is equals to margin of safety upon the actual sales, or you can even say that we can replace actual sales with break-even point plus the margin of safety. And when we put the values, in that case, if we are imagining or assuming that margin of safety is x, and when we put the values here out, we can find the value of x, that is coming out as 5 lakh. If margin of safety is 5 lakh, then profit can be easily calculated by multiplying it with PV ratio by that is 40%. We are able to find out the amount of margin of safety, that is rupees 2 lakh. We can cross check it because we know that actual sales is equals to break-even point plus the margin of safety. We can put the values, which is coming out as 10 lakh only. So it is verified at this point. For profit also we can verify. Profit is equals to actual sales into MS ratio, that is margin of safety ratio, into PV ratio, which is also coming out as 2 lakh. So it is verified. In the other two cases, let us see. Margin of safety is given as 70,000. PV ratio we have calculated as 65,000. So profit is 45,500. In the next case, contribution minus the fixed cost. Contribution can be calculated by multiplying the actual sales with the PV ratio. So we are able to find out the profit as rupees 6,000. One more question we have. Here also independent questions are given. First case, margin of safety is 60%, fixed cost is 2,10,000, variable cost ratio to sales is 70%. We need to calculate the amount of actual sales. Let us have a look. So first of all, we can find out our PV ratio as 30%. We can find out break-even point using fixed cost upon the PV ratio. We are able to obtain it as 7 lakh. In the next case, sales is equals to break-even point in rupees upon 100 plus or minus whatsoever is the margin of safety ratio. So we are able to obtain this amount as 70 lakh 50,000. We can verify it. Break-even point is equals to actual sales minus the margin of safety. which after putting up the values we are able to verify that it is coming 7 lakh only. In the next case, they have given fixed cost and BE point, and from there we can find out the PV ratio using the formula of break-even point, and that is coming out as 37.5%. In the next case, we are given with actual sales and margin of safety, and we need to find out PV ratio. So first of all, we will find out the break-even point by subtracting these two, and then PV ratio is equals to fixed cost upon BE point. Then in that case, PV ratio is coming out as 30%. Then in next case, they have given you the values of profit, margin of safety ratio, and PV ratio. So first of all, let us calculate the actual sales using this formula, that is profit upon margin of safety ratio and PV ratio, that is coming out as 1 lakh, and then simply we can subtract the margin of safety from actual sales and find out the break-even point as 70,000. In the next case, they have given the fixed cost PV ratio. So let us calculate the BE point. So it is coming out as 6 lakh. We can check out the capacity sales, that is coming out as 10 lakh. Then sales at 72% capacity as per the question, we can calculate this is 7 lakh 20,000. So profit we can calculate by sales into PV ratio minus the fixed cost. So it is coming out as 36,000. The further parts also can be calculated similarly. We can see that contribution upon sales into 100 formula is used to find out the PV ratio. From there, margin of safety can be calculated as rupees 5 lakh. Fixed cost can be calculated by subtracting profit from contribution, and BE point as 2 lakh rupees. In the next part, fixed cost is given as 25,000, break-even point as 50,000. From there, we can find out our PV ratio as 50%, and then we can use the further information to obtain the sales as 90,000. In the next case, PV ratio can be found out as 20%. Break-even sales can be obtained using the information. So we are able to obtain it as 1,20,000. Break-even point simply can be calculated like this. First of all, we can calculate fixed cost, that is break-even point into PV ratio. We can put up the values, so we are able to calculate the amount as rupees 24,000. You may practice more of such numerical questions, because these questions are quite easy if you are aware with the concept. If you are aware with the formulas, it is not at all difficult. So do practice a lot so that you're not stuck up in the exam with any problem with these questions. If you face any kind of problem, you may write to me, you may contact me. Thank you.